Hey, thanks everyone. It's my third party and I'll cry if I want to. And I warn you right now, I might actually cry. This is 45 minutes about the perils, the dangers, the mess, the absolute minefield that is third-party performance. I'm willing to bet that any website you've built, ever, has involved one, if not a handful of third-party resources. And that's usually for convenience. It's usually because we either don't want to build something ourselves, we don't know how to build something ourselves, we can't afford to, we just need to rely on somebody else, and it's usually convenient to use a third party. That convenience obviously brings a trade-off. There are risks associated with leaving other people in charge of part of your stack, and I want to talk today about identifying those risks, measuring them, and beginning to mitigate them, beginning to actually fix them. So as Phil said, I'm a consultant performance engineer. That's what I'm calling myself at the moment. Anyone self-employed, just change your job title every few years. You get hired for new work. It's remarkable. I'm based in Leeds in the north of England, which goes some way toward explaining the weird accent. The slides for this talk are already online, so I'll tweet them as soon as I get off stage, so keep an eye on Twitter. The slides are already online, so don't worry too much about grabbing resources immediately. But as Phil briefly mentioned, I've been very, very fortunate in my career. I've had a very enjoyable career. I've worked with some pretty big, some pretty interesting clients, and everyone on this screen has had some kind of third-party performance issue during their sort of like development lifecycle. Now, the worst thing about a third-party performance issue is it's kind of not your fault. So you could have done everything properly, you could have done everything theoretically perfectly, and a third party can be the one who leaves a chink in your armor. So I've worked with companies like these to try and help identify these risks and begin designing around them. And interestingly, the beginning of this month, I've started a new kind of role as a fractional performance ambassador, a bit of a mouthful, but there's an e-commerce platform, a startup in Leeds where I'm from, and we're tackling e-commerce as a platform, making it fast by default. So if anyone does work on an e-commerce site or on an e-commerce platform, and you're having performance issues, I would love to chat about that, because it's something I'm researching a lot more at the moment, trying to make performance in e-commerce just a much easier task. Now, when I started writing and researching a talk on third parties, my mind immediately went to this news story. This news story is 10 years old now. It's from Australia, 2008. But it really reminded me of kind of third-party performance issues because it involves parties, it involves unwanted guests, and it involves financial repercussions.
Well, it's the real-life risky business. A teenager holds an alcohol-fueled party for hundreds of kids while his unsuspecting parents are on holiday. 16-year-old Corey Worthington is now facing not only the wrath of mum and dad, but a $20,000 fine from police. I spoke to him a short time ago. Corey, thanks for joining us. The only question that I can think to ask is, what were you thinking?
I wasn't really.
Did your parents say you could have a party?
No.
So
they didn't.
Why did you?
I don't know, it was just a get-together with a couple of mates at first, and then we thought we might as well just have a bit of a party, and then it sort of just got out of hand, and yeah.
I fucking hate that guy. I hate that guy so much. But that thing he says at the end, oh, it just got out of hand. I was like, well, that's a huge understatement, dude. This cost his parents like $20,000. But yeah, it just got out of hand, and that made me think of something else. When it comes to third-party performance, it usually is just a case of something got out of hand. Nobody on purpose built a slow website, right? Nobody wanted a slow website. So one thing I've realized in my sort of consultancy career is that a lot of the third-party, and indeed any performance issue, but specifically third parties, a lot of the issues just come from a simple disconnect. So I got a client email me last year saying, hey, we've got a problem with our website, and we believe it might be to do with third parties. And I was like, well, send it over. There isn't much I haven't seen. There isn't much that scares me anymore, so send it over. I've seen it all. This one did scare me. Oh, get comfortable. It goes on for a bit longer. I've never seen a waterfall chart start with once upon a time before. Now, the disconnect is this. The engineering team, they built the green bit, right? That's the web page. That's what they believed they had done. That's what they did as their job. So they had a relatively good idea of what they had done. But then the site goes live, and the live environment is always very, very different to your dev environment because your tag managers kick in, your analytics kicks in, your advertising providers, your kind of run tooling, everything kicks in on live. And this disconnect is huge, and it's largely because of a thing called a tag manager. Now, please give me an honest show of hands. Who isn't sure what a tag manager is? I'll just give you a quick introduction. Okay, that's actually quite a few of you. This is terrifying because you really need to know about this, and no one's ever told you. Imagine a scenario. You're building a website, and somebody in the marketing department or a client says, hey, can you just add Google Analytics? And you say, well, yeah, I can do that. Copy and paste the code, done. Then the next day they say, hey, can you just add this A/B testing tool? And you're like, I'm kind of busy. Can you put it on the backlog? I'll do it when I get a chance. And the marketing department start to get annoyed because, well, it shouldn't take that long. Why is it taking 3 days to get this thing? So somebody invented a tag manager. And what a tag manager is it's like a direct sort of path to live that the developer never sees. So a tag manager is a small bit of JavaScript that you add to your site somewhere in the head tag, and it just installs one small JavaScript file. Then your marketing department or your client, they've got a login to like Google Tag Manager or maybe Adobe Tag Manager. There are many available. And in there, they can start copying and pasting something they found on a forum post from 13 years ago. How do I measure clicks on this? Well, copy and paste that. And this is stuff like, and it could be stuff like that, but it could be official things like they could install an A/B testing tool that way. But basically, this tag manager becomes a conduit to live. And people are writing production JavaScript, right? Not production quality JavaScript, no way. But it's still going straight to production. And this is how developers who build websites often don't recognize them once they've gone live, because at some point a tag manager kicked in here, and it was a third party that invited all of its mates, right? It's like a third party's third party. Now, tag managers aren't necessarily a bad thing. When used properly, they can actually be more effective than not having them, but this is a case of something getting out of hand. So in this talk, and we don't have, I could do a full workshop on third-party performance, but in this talk, I'm going to try and focus on 4 key areas. One is understanding the risks that third parties bring. Secondly, measuring and auditing that risk. Third, we need to discuss that risk. This is the hardest part, right? Because most of these things have technological solutions, but discussing these with marketing teams or with the third-party providers themselves is often very difficult, usually very political. And finally, mitigation. How do we design around this? How do we actually stop these things from being critical? So understand. I'm going to start with the one I understand least, which is security. But let's try and actually build a picture of what kind of risks third parties can introduce. The first one I want to look at is security, because you're basically inviting someone onto your website, and that someone could bring a friend that you don't know. They could change, right? You might, oh yeah, I knew this guy 10 years ago, he's really nice, and he turns up and now he's a meth addict, right? And he's just, oh, it's not what I expected. This is the exact kind of thing that can happen when you're just blindly inviting anyone onto your website. Hopefully your tag manager's not on crack. So starting with the most basic thing, if you're pulling a third party from an insecure origin, you're going to start getting mixed content warnings. Now, a mixed content warning in itself isn't that bad, but when you think about if you're an e-commerce site and Chrome says, oh, this site is now insecure, that's going to start eroding consumer trust, right? At its most basic, having things like mixed content warnings begins to erode consumer trust. But if you do have some insecure third parties, there's every chance they could be man in the middle. Someone could intercept that asset and kind of compromise it. This could have huge security risks. A lot of data leaks and data breaches happen this way. And finally, bad actors running amok. What I mean by this is, what if the third party is just a bit sleazy? What if it didn't get compromised? What if it was just a bad third party that happens to be leeching customer data at the same time it's promising to do something else? I flew to Iceland last year. Just realized how creepy I look peering over DevTools at you. Flew to Iceland last year, and I always buy the in-flight Wi-Fi because I can't believe we can fly, never mind have internet up there. So I'm a mug. I will always buy the in-flight Wi-Fi. And what happened was, this was during a period when my site could be accessed via either a secure or an insecure connection. And if I was going over an insecure connection, I was getting man in the middle. Iceland Air were advertising at me. Actually, what I did, annoyingly, because I took this screenshot for different reasons, I deleted most of the adverts from this, because what I wanted to initially show was something else. The state of the man-in-the-middle ad thing was way worse than I'm sort of showing here, is basically what I'm trying to say. But when they were man-in-the-middling me, when they were proxying me through their Iceland Air servers, look at this third column, protocol. They're reducing me to a HTTP 1.0 connection, right? They're severely impacting the performance of my website. YouTube, this is a funny one. Well, funny in a kind of not funny way. They were busted running crypto mining ads on their site. YouTube was recently caught displaying ads that covertly leech off visitors' CPU and electricity in order to generate digital currency on behalf of anonymous attackers. right? So you go into YouTube, and not only will your fans whizzing anyway because of the video, someone was mining Bitcoin on your machine. So it could be that the third party is just not that great anyway. So at a minimum, pull everything from secure origins. You've got a way better idea and understanding of what's going to be going on, and you're also mitigating a lot of security risk. There's a secondary benefit, though, right? As well as being secure, TLS is fast, or rather it can be. Because if you run a TLS everywhere sort of site, you can begin to use things like H2. H2 is not available over an insecure connection, nor is Service Worker, nor is Broadly. These are web platform features that are available to us if we run over a secure connection. The next risk that we run the risk of being at risk of is delays. And it doesn't need me to tell a room full of developers that time is money on the web. Delays are expensive. It could be that a slow third party is having, sorry, that didn't work. It could be that a third party is running slowly. The network, the downlink between that third party and the first party could be slow. There could be problems with third-party infrastructure. What if your third-party CDN is getting DDoSed? Or what if having an outage? I don't want to put kind of naughty thoughts in your mind, but literally last week I was with a client and I realized something quite interesting that I'd never thought about before. A lot of people link to things like code.jquery.com/jquery311 or whatever, right? If I was like a script kiddie, right, doing my first ever bit of hacking on the web, DDoSing someone like code.jquery would have a huge knock-on effect. Right? I'd never thought about that, and please don't go and do it. But what a huge attack vector that would be for someone who's like just new to just being a bit of a dick on the internet, right? So this is the kind of thing that could happen. If your third-party provider is getting DDoSed, what's going to happen to you? And finally, third-party runtime. What if the network is fine? What if your third party isn't having an outage? What if they just haven't built their sort of third-party assets very well? They haven't optimized the images, or more worryingly, what if they've written really bad JavaScript that just pegs the CPU? Friend of mine, or client turned friend of mine, this is me quoting my friend Ryan, who is in turn quoting a third-party provider. So Ryan is the CTO of a very performance-conscious company in Leeds, and he had a bit of a suspicion that one of their third-party providers was slowing them down. So they just jumped on a call, right, because they spend money with this third party, they sort of organized a call, and they raised their concerns, and the third party said, oh, there is 0 performance overhead to using our synchronous script. Our typical response time is around 200 milliseconds. Well, pick one. Is it 0 or is it 200 milliseconds, right? It can't be both. 200 milliseconds is a hell of a long time when we talk about performance engineering. Also, this is a synchronous script. So that's 200 milliseconds in which we can't be doing anything else. In fact, 200 milliseconds ever expands to 2,000 milliseconds. That's 2 seconds we can't be doing anything else. So this is a very naive response. Trainline. Trainline's actually a client of mine. They released a case study that said if they could reduce latency by 0.3 seconds, customers would spend an extra £8.1 million a year. Right, that's for the sake of 0.3 seconds. The good news is it's dead easy to make a website 0.3 seconds faster, so we more than achieved this goal. But this 200 milliseconds then would equate to 5.4 million. That person on the phone saying there is 0 overhead to it could have just cost this company £5.4 million in lost revenue a year. Mobify for 200 milliseconds, that would equate to $750,000 a year, so not anywhere near as impressive, but still, $750,000. Right? That's quite a Christmas party you could throw with a spare $750,000. But my favorite, and by far the most eye-watering, is Walmart. Walmart found that for every 100 millisecond improvement they made in performance, it resulted in up to a 1% increase in revenue. I just quickly Googled Walmart 2017 e-commerce revenue, so just e-commerce revenue, and it was eye-watering. It was disgusting how rich that company is. Because a 1% increase in performance, 100 milliseconds is 1%, 200 milliseconds, 2%. You all with me? That was some complex math. 2% increase in performance would yield a $230 million increase in revenue. And this is the same, well, this company was saying, oh, it's not a big deal. It could be a huge deal, right? Now, of course, you've got to take all of these stats with a pinch of salt, because if your company makes like $100,000 a year online, 200 milliseconds isn't going to make you that 230 million extra. So you've got to think about your audience, but still, this is huge. Now, what happens if we go beyond a delay? What if it's worse than a delay? What if it becomes a single point of failure? So a delay is just a slow loading file. What if that file is on a domain that's having an outage? What if the third party has gone down? This is the worst case scenario then. What happens if a third party is critical to building your page and that third party goes offline? Well, this is an exact thing that's happened to a number of clients of mine. A broadcaster in the UK called Sky. Hopefully we can see here. Oh, we can't, it's cropped. Well, that's completely ruined that demo. There's nothing I can do about that. The two main bits you want to see here. Okay, the bit you can see here is a pending script, right? And you'll just have to trust me on the rest. I'm going to have to really wing this one. So what you should be able to see, I'll make this available to anyone who wants to see it on my machine later, is that we've got no title, right? We've made a connection to this site, and what we can see here is we've got this third-party script just above the title element. Can you see that? Now, because that third party is having an outage, the parser, the browser's parser, hasn't even found the title element yet, which means in the tab in Chrome, it just says https www.sky.com. It hasn't even managed to give the user the title of the web page. All of the HTML payload has arrived. It's made it onto the machine, but the parser is blocked at this third-party outage. Because this tag manager has gone down, we're seeing a blank screen. And it's worse than just a blank screen. We haven't even got Sky News and Sport or whatever in the tab of Chrome. We've just got a URL. Now, what's going to happen is when this finishes, which I think it may have finished, I can't tell myself, is this has got, Chrome's got built-in timeout. Chrome is going to keep looking for this file for 80 seconds. So what's eventually going to happen is after, there we go, after 1.3 minutes, Chrome finally says, oh, I guess they have an outage. I'm going to continue and parse the rest of the page. So for 80 seconds, we showed a user literally nothing just because of naively linking to a critical third party. I've worked with many companies where this has happened, and they don't know it happens because they're not usually the ones to find it. Your customers find it, and then Twitter hears about it, and then you hear about it. That's the worst way around it could happen. This isn't a problem with Adobe Tag Manager. This isn't Adobe Tag Manager's fault necessarily, and nor is it JavaScript's fault, right? The problem here is just we are naively linking to a critical asset that lives on a separate domain, separate infrastructure. If you just do link rel equals stylesheet fonts.googleapis.com, you leave yourself open to the exact same problem. If googleapis.com has an outage, your style sheet will block the entire page, giving a blank screen for 1.3 minutes. So this isn't a unique to JavaScript thing. So these are kind of risks we're inviting. How do we audit them? How do we measure these things? So when I do performance audits for my clients, I've got a sort of fairly strategic list of things that I run through. And when I do third-party performance, there's a specific subset of tasks in there as well. The first one is a very, very broad overview of the general impact of all third parties. This is fairly non-scientific. This gives me a good idea of, are third parties a problem, yes or no? And if yes, roughly by how much? Now, I said the slides are already online, but if you want to grab one of my favorite tools ever, get your phones ready to take a picture of the next slide. Because we're going to be making a use of a tool called requestmap.webperf.tools. This is great. This tool is fantastic. Now, the slides are online. Don't panic. Also, I will come back to this in a second, but this tool is great. Before we jump into request map, what I like to do, and this is a bit of a uniqueness to my workflow. This next bit isn't mandatory, but what I do is I will just have a tab of request map open, won't do anything with it yet. I'll then go to web page test. Now, if you've heard of web page test, you probably agree that it's the best thing ever. If you haven't heard of web page test, I implore you to just give it a quick look this evening. It's a fantastic tool. Run a test against a certain web page, and you will be given an ID. You'll be given a unique ID for that test. Then what we do is we just plug the ID into request map. Blah, 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 blah. This is the most inefficient way of giving you this information, isn't it? Take pictures of this, write this one down, remember to go here. But the reason I'm telling you to do it this way around is because we're going to go back to web page test shortly. Anyway, what request map does is it gives us what me and my clients have lovingly called the jellyfish. This is great for marketing departments, and that always sounds patronizing, but what I mean by that is this is great for people who aren't particularly technically minded. This level of data viz allows them to roughly see what the state of third parties is. This is CNN. CNN should have the fastest website because they're always used in case studies. But they don't, so they're not listening, obviously. The size of each blob represents the number of kilobytes from that domain. The distance between each blob represents the time to first byte between those domains. And the thickness of the lines between each blob shows us the number of requests between those two domains. Now, this is great for, like I say, non-technical audiences, but as an engineer, what I want is, down on the right-hand side, download CSV data. That gives me a nice sort of spreadsheet data file full of all the third-party domains, what kind of third-party they are, and the performance information associated with them. Don't laugh at me, I don't write much awk, but if you get hold of these slides, just copy and paste this one-liner, and what this will do is it will extract every single third-party domain. Right? Every domain that belongs to a third party, it'll just dump that out as plain text. Because what we're going to do now is go back to web page test, and they've got this remarkable, really, really useful block feature. What this will do is it'll rerun the performance test, but it will block any outgoing requests to all of those domains. What this allows me to do is rerun a test with all of these third parties missing. I can generally and very quickly see what the performance is like before and after if I remove every single third party. So looking at the before and after, we see the load time is greatly increased if I've got all my third parties enabled. So if we've got any important thing tied to the load event, our third parties are pushing that back. However, a little more optimistically, we can see that start render and speed index aren't drastically affected. So I can at least proxy or at least guess or assume that these third parties are being loaded somewhat responsibly. They're not necessarily blocking our render. However, if we move to something like requests, we'll see that the number of requests was increased by 4.2 times if we had all third parties enabled. The actual bytes over the wire was increased by 2.7 times by having all third parties enabled. There's an interesting statistic I dug out for a client recently. As of 2015, the end of 2015, 20% of British people still have a pay-as-you-go mobile device, right? They don't have data included in a package. That means that every single kilobyte they download, they are paying for. So if every time they visit your website, it costs them 3 times more of actual cash than it should do because of your keenness to track them around the web, right? And I think there's an element of sort of ethics and sort of morality involved in that. That's me getting on my soapbox. Holger's talking about that tomorrow. So this is very non-scientific, so I wanted to look at drilling down a bit more into specific third parties we're interested in. So what happens if we've got a slow origin? What happens if a third party is running slowly? This is a really important question to ask. What happens if Typekit's running slowly? What happens if Adobe Tag Manager is running slowly? What happens if anyone is running slowly? The important question to ask, and thankfully a very, very simple question to answer. We're going to lean on a tool called Charles. Anybody heard of or used Charles Proxy? Oh, wicked, most of you. For those who haven't, Charles Proxy is free in the same way that Sublime Text is free, if you know what I mean. So I'd go and grab a copy of Charles. It's a really good tool. It's basically a network proxy. I don't really use it for that. It's got this throttle feature. Proxy, throttle settings, enable throttling, and then this is the best bit, enable only for selected hosts. So your Chrome throttling is, one, it's not great, right? The throttling in Chrome is all done on the application layer. Charles operates on the network layer, so it can actually do things like packet retransmission, buffer blow, head of line blocking, all that kind of stuff. But also what it can do is target specific origins. So what happens if my CDN is running over like a 2G connection? So this is absolutely worth doing, and you can actually start to work out that, all right, if Typekit is running slowly, then our font display swap hasn't kicked in. We found a bug there, perhaps. Going one step further, this is delayed third parties, outages. What happens if Google Tag Manager goes down? What happens if Google Analytics goes down completely? What happens if Google Fonts goes down completely? Let's use Google in 3 examples there. It's really bad of me. And someone who isn't Google goes down completely. Again, really good question to ask. Incredibly simple question to answer due to modern tooling. Web page test make available this black hole server. Now, the black hole server is available at blackhole.webpagetest.org. Don't visit that in a browser. I shouldn't have even told you how to get there. Just don't do it. But we can work out the IP address of that black hole server. What it basically does is any traffic that passes through it, it just goes missing, right? It just simulates an outage. It just times out forever. It's a TPC timeout, so it means the browser, it basically is, it can't accept any incoming requests. In your hosts file, you can just map the third parties you're interested in against this IP address, clear your DNS, refresh the page, and you can basically see what happens if platform.twitter.com was down completely. I hopefully shouldn't need to say this, but it's just down for you, right? You're not just bricking platform.twitter.com for everyone. It's all locally. That's exactly how I spoofed this example, because interestingly, I don't know if I've got enough time for this, but I'll tell you a story. I was working with a client, a very, 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 very large client, who were using Google Fonts as part of their core product. And that's completely fine, right? Because Google allow you to do that. It's commercially available. But they were actually using it as part of the service that they were reselling. And I asked their engineering team, OK, what's the service level agreement? They're like, a what? I was like, an SLA? Have you read what happens if they go down? No. So I dug into it, and Google Fonts don't offer a service level agreement. If they go down, they don't care. They don't owe you an apology, because it's a free service and they've made no promise to you. Nor do they publish uptime info. So you can't actually go to status.googlefonts.com and see if they're suffering an outage. They don't even publish that historical data. You can't see if they ever had an outage. So I got in touch with someone at Google Fonts and asked them, and interestingly, they've never had an outage. Since they went live, they've never had 1 millisecond of downtime. Doesn't mean they won't, but it is statistically a fairly reliable service. The next thing to look at is missing files. This is an interesting one. This deals not with outages or delays, it deals with faults, errors, right? And what happens if a file goes missing? Jake Archibald said a few years ago now, but I still agree with him, all of your users are non-JS users whilst they are downloading your JavaScript. There's a point in a page's lifecycle where every user is a non-JS user. Now, this is a semi-controversial opinion, but I do not believe in optimizing for the use case that somebody has disabled JavaScript. I don't believe that's worthwhile. If somebody's disabled JavaScript, they knew what they were doing. Also, just to make it even worse, even more controversial, you probably all laugh at the idea of supporting IE6, but I guarantee you've probably got more IE6 users than on-purpose disabled JavaScript users, right? So think about it that way. If your IE6 support is, get lost, then so is your non-JS, really. What I do believe, though, is we need to consider what happens if that JavaScript fails. What happens if that JavaScript doesn't make it over the wire? What happens if there's a fatal error in that JavaScript and it doesn't run properly? I was with a company last week, the week before last, big company who may or may not do video streaming, so they've always got a lot of visitors on the site. And they pushed a performance fix, which just so happened accidentally to version bump a dependency, JavaScript dependency, which had a fatal error in a specific version of Safari on iOS 11 point something, right? It was a very specific thing to pinpoint, and it's because a new date object was actually being returned as a string. The entire application couldn't get past that, and it just bailed out. So the entire site was just effectively down for a small subset of users, but that was because the application couldn't recover from this JavaScript error that hadn't been captured otherwise. So what happens if the file goes missing? We need to think about resilience. Here's a really interesting story from a couple of years ago. Most mobile providers, telcos, right, T-Mobile, 3, whatever, they actually proxy whatever you're browsing through their own servers to definitely not spy on you, but to actually make things faster. What they'll do is they'll say, oh, this image hasn't been optimized. I'll optimize it for them and pass it on. Oh, this CSS file hasn't been minified. I will minify it for them and pass it on. They opened jQuery and found that, oh, there's a comment in the middle of jQuery. We better delete that. It found a /* and started deleting. Now, it wasn't a comment is the problem. It was a regular expression. It was a /* in the middle of a regular expression, and T-Mobile's proxy servers just started deleting, and they didn't stop deleting until they found the end of the comment, which didn't exist. So they deleted about 2/3 of jQuery, wiped their hands, patted themselves on the back, congratulated themselves for a job well done, and sent jQuery down to the end user. It completely broke the internet for several days for hundreds of thousands of people. I guess the moral of this story is, again, TLS everywhere will fix this. Make sure you're running over a secure connection. This was an inadvertent man-in-the-middle of attack that affected thousands of people. Whew, I need to speed up. This is a client of mine, and I asked them this question. I said, look, what happens if app.js goes missing? And the bad news was we just showed the user an infinite loading spinner. It doesn't take much to just defensively program around this. Timeouts, you know, if we haven't initialized the app, something's gone wrong. Prompt them to refresh the page or do something, right? Just do something. The last thing we need to audit, I think it's the last thing we need to audit, is runtime cost. So let's assume that everything's gone really well. We managed to get the file in a timely manner. It didn't have any errors. We didn't get man-in-the-middled. But now we're only about to start running the code. So there's still a massive gap here where things could go wrong, or a massive opportunity for things to go wrong. As a performance engineer, I really enjoy any opportunity, any chance to blame somebody else, because it means I still get paid and I don't have to do any of the work. So let's do that. In DevTools, we need to run a performance profile, right? In the Performance tab, just reload the page, capture a performance profile. In the bottom, there's a little summary panel. And in the summary panel, you're going to find something called bottom-up. Go and select bottom-up. And here's my favorite bit, like in all of the performance panel, is you can group by different things, including grouping by domain. You can see which domain, therefore which third party generally, is causing you the most runtime cost. Now, this is a fully client-rendered React application. I have opinions separately about that. But this is a fully client-rendered React application, So I therefore completely expect the first-party domain to be the most expensive. I expect us to have the highest runtime cost because it's a fully client-rendered JavaScript application, right? However, when I stopped grouping by domain and began grouping by specific URL or specific file, I was rather shocked to find the single most expensive file was Google Tag Manager. Somehow Google Tag Manager was more expensive than the entire React bundle. This immediately showed me that, yes, we have a third-party problem. And what's also particularly nice is this view updates as you scrub the performance panel. So you can see that kind of the health of the page over time. What you could hopefully see there was the fact that we were prioritizing third-party runtime ahead of first-party at the beginning of this process. Defer your third parties. Focus on getting first-party content delivered, then defer all your third parties afterwards. Really simple thing to find, even simpler thing to fix. Stick a defer attribute on your tag manager, done. Next thing is, unfortunately, as I said before, the hardest bit, discussion. Now, as a consultant, it's my job to have these difficult discussions, so most of the engineering teams I work with still remain shielded from this, but I still think it's a really good skill to have, because rocking up to a marketing department and telling them that every single thing they do, day in, day out, makes the site fractionally worse is not a nice job, right? No one wants to have to do that. So the next thing I want to go through is some techniques that I've used to try and soften the blow of delivering that information. Nearly every time I discuss third parties with a client, I always get the same response. Oh, they're a necessary evil. Oh, we have to use it, right? But it's nowhere near as black and white as that. Black and white, see what I did there? It's the most artsy thing I've ever done in a slide. But I think this is a really lazy answer. It's a necessary evil, it just gets them off the hook. Oh, we don't have to explain it, it's that we don't want to use it, but we have to. If you don't want to use it, don't use it, right? If you don't want to use it, get rid of it. If it's not doing anything good for you. And also, we need to work out what does necessary even mean. Because I'd say that maybe using an analytics package is going to be necessary. You can't optimize what you can't measure, so I don't think analytics is a bad thing. Capturing RUM data is probably quite necessary. You want to see how this thing performs. From a performance point of view, it's probably necessary to have that. Having a crypto mining little nasty, sleazy bit of thing in there, that's not necessary, and it also is evil. So we need to really dissect what we mean when we talk about this kind of stuff. So discussing third-party performance, there are two main parties we will have to discuss it with. The first people are going to be the providers, right? The actual third-party vendors themselves. I've had a few situations in my career, in my sort of performance work, where we have identified a third party that we think is particularly bad. And we have to get in touch with them and let them know and see if they've got plans to solve it, if there's anything we can do to mitigate it in the short term. But my only bit of advice here is make triple sure that it is actually them before you call them. Like, don't ring up like, oh, you're shit. And they're like, oh, no, you just implemented it wrong. And you're really embarrassed, like, oh, I'm sorry, I must have got the wrong number. So, form a hypothesis. If you think a specific third party is slowing you down, you're probably correct. But form a hypothesis. Work out perhaps how and why. Run the tests, gather the data. Number two is the most important bit. This is when you can be certain beyond all doubt that it is that particular third party. Do not skip step number two. Once you've gathered the data, let them know, right? It's really important to notify them. Get in touch with them. Now, this can take a number of different guises. There are a number of different ways you can do this. And depending on who that third party is and what level of access you have to them. Some third parties, you'll spend tens of thousands of euro a year with them, so it's easy to just pick up the phone and you'll have an account manager. But some third parties are a complete black box. Like, how do you get in touch with the Google Analytics engineers? So therefore, you might have to look at things like support forums or community forums, that kind of thing. Issues and pull requests, a lot of open source third parties, you can just get in touch with them on GitHub, fix it yourself even. But all of those depend on your level of access to either a person in the business or that business's visibility and sort of openness online. So if all else fails, resort to step 4. And like I said before, go to Twitter, right? Because if it comes from Twitter, someone panics. So my ad provider, Carbon Ads, by all accounts, seem like a really nice company. I've dealt with them a little bit. And this is one of my exchanges with them a while ago. I was like, hey, you're using target blank on your ads. Can you also use rel equals no opener? Because target blank is bad for security and bad for performance. But yep, sure, we'll look into it. And about 6 weeks later, it was live. Right, done. DHL were running an application that was collecting customer data. No credit card information that I'm aware of, but certainly it was collecting names and addresses. They were running it over an optionally secure or insecure connection. I just tweeted at them, hey, can you just force this onto a secure connection? About 2 weeks later, it was done. This is an interesting one. So when we talk about third parties, that's basically the immediate person we're using. But your third parties probably have their own third parties. Colloquially, we call them fourth and fifth parties. Lotame, never heard of them, but they were being pulled in by my ad provider. So they're a fourth party. I tweeted at them saying, hey, can you force this over a secure connection? And their CTO got in touch directly, said, hey, we're looking into it. So if you can panic the CTO, you're doing good. Now, one thing I have to admit before anyone else picks me up on it is there is a blue tick up there. That does help, right? It does help if you've got the blue tick thing. But my point here is sending a tweet is more than doing nothing at all. So start with this, right? This could have effect. It could. If it doesn't, at least you tried. But at least try gather some traction. The next thing, and I'd say the most difficult, is dealing with internal teams, right? Because like I said, rocking up to your marketing team and telling them that, oh, your tag manager makes everything worse is not productive. And it's probably not even true, right? So we need to be very careful with how we do this. So remember the CSV file we downloaded from the Jellyfish earlier? We're going to come back to that. I'm going to quickly whiz through some tools that I use. I'm going to make the tools available to you as well. But dragging these third-party, this third-party information into a spreadsheet. Because the business, right, they always love spreadsheets. If I can give them a spreadsheet, they will listen. Now what this is this just categorizes all the third parties that were found on a given page. Anything yellow is a duplicate. So then you can start to say, why do we have 2 analytics packages? Why do we have 5 ad networks? Anything in red is a grading of severity. So anything that's graded sort of white to pale red is in your worst 90th percentile. Anything that's solid red, sorry, no, it's in the bottom 90th percentile, sorry, the bottom 90th percentile. Anything that's a really solid angry red is the top 10 percentile of worst offenders. Those are the things you should tackle first. Anyway, I'm going to make this available. This spreadsheet is already available. We just want to import that CSV over the top of this data. This looks really boring, showing you what to click on, but there's one very key step that I need you to pay attention to. File, import, go and grab your CSV file, and here's the important bit. It's imperative that you click replace data at selected cell. If you don't do that, it'll create a new sheet which won't have any of the conditional formatting, so you don't get any of the colors. Replace it with selected cell, and this is what your audit will now look like. So here I could go to CNN and say, look, you're using N amount of A/B testing tools. You're using this many ad providers. You're using this many RUM solutions. Why is that? Once we've got this data, you'll notice there is a very important column, column H, that's currently empty. This is the notes column. This is where we actually shut up and listen for a while, and we go to the marketing team or whoever's in charge, and we just ask them questions, right? Because it's important to ask at this stage and not tell. If you rock up with your spreadsheet saying, all this is gone by Friday, you're not going to get very far with that team. So ask, don't tell. Arrange a meeting. Holger wants a picture of that? Go on, mate. It's all yours. Gives me a chance to have some water. You better take a picture of it now. I've gone back. Can we get a slow clap for Holger, please? Right, so gather the data, organize a meeting, ask questions, and learn. It's at this point you want to learn about what these third parties are, because it's your job now to work out which ones are necessary and which ones are evil. Questions could include any of these. I don't have time to go into all of them. The last one is my favorite. Are there any services we don't recognize? You'll get answers like, oh, we shut this account down 2 years ago. Why is it still on the site? Working with a company right now are doing exactly that. They're like, we closed down our so-and-so account 2 years ago. It's not meant to be live anymore. Immediate candidate for deletion. So go and fill in that notes column, and then you can start to have a strategy for trimming the fat. That URL is the spreadsheet, so go and grab that if you want. I've only got 7 official minutes to get through the last section of the talk, so I'm going to try and speed up a little bit. We need to look at mitigation now. We've identified this stuff. We've sort of measured the risk, measured the impact. We've started to discuss it with people, but how can we actually design around this? How can we design around this in the first place? My first bit of advice is always self-host, right? Anything you can host yourself, do so, right? Web fonts are a key example of this, but anything you can host yourself, do so. You control your own infrastructure. It means that if you're having an outage, you've got bigger things to worry about than your web font, right? You're having an outage. But if you're running smoothly, and let's say you're an e-commerce shop and it's Black Friday and you're running smoothly, and your render blocking tag manager goes down, that's when you start to panic. So anything you can control yourself, try and do so. Specific low-level things like there's reduced network negotiation, no DNS, TCP, TLS to an origin that is already warmed up. You can dictate your own more aggressive caching strategy. You're not at the mercy of a third party's caching strategy. And you can do things like preload, right? Preload assets from your own domain, send things nice and early. So where possible, self-host any critical assets. This is things as simple as don't link to code.jquery.com, grab it via npm, or just do a simple copy and paste into your own sort of project directory. Anything you can't self-host, things that do need to be dynamically administered, like a tag manager or like an analytics package, load them asynchronously. Right? Make sure you're not blocking anything. Make sure you've not created any single points of failure. So always use the third party's provided asynchronous loading method. If a third party doesn't provide an asynchronous loading method, be suspicious. That's a huge red flag, because they haven't considered the event that they have an outage. They haven't considered what happens to you if they go down. The fix for Sky was just to stick an async attribute in there, right? 6 magical characters, and this site just got a whole lot more resilient. I'm counting the space async, before you're going, oh, there's only 5 in async. Resource hints is the next one. Sorry, what a pedant. I out-pedanted myself on stage. Resource hints, who's heard of resource hints? DNS prefetch, preload, preconnect, etc. Well, there's your homework. Resource hints are amazing. If we hit any third-party domains frequently, we can warm them up. So any new domain we go to potentially has DNS overhead, and then from there it will have TCP and hopefully TLS negotiation. That could be expensive. That could be hundreds of milliseconds. We can use resource hints to start warming that stuff up early. So take a page on your site, give it a quick audit. Right? We've got a font provider, we've got a social media widget, ad network. Behind the scenes, there's some analytics, some RUM tooling. And we can just do link rel equals preconnect. This tells the browser to early and preemptively open a full TCP connection to the origin. Well, this means that instead of doing DNS, TCP, TLS at the very last and most inopportune moment, we can divorce this network negotiation from the overall file time to a tune of hundreds of milliseconds. 300 milliseconds is worth 8 mil to train line. Imagine typing a few lines of HTML and seeing your bank account go up by 8.1 mil. Only warm up frequently used, significant, and known origins. So if you know that you always hit a certain domain, pre-connect that one. But if that domain has its own third party that it sometimes connects to, don't preemptively open up 4th, 5th, 6th parties, because that can be wasteful. Now, the whole kind of ethos of this event is looking at the future. So I frantically added a few slides this morning that tick that future box. Sorry, Kenneth, probably shouldn't have told you that. But new stuff I want to look at. This isn't actually that new. Who's used CSP? That's not quite enough. It's really easy to implement, dead easy to implement. CSP allows us to selectively choose which third parties we trust, who we will load onto a page. Administered via an HTTP header, and what we're saying here is that the default source is self, right? So we can load anything from the first party, JavaScript, images, CSS. We're only going to allow images from ImageX, right? That's what we're saying there. If it's not from ImageX, don't load it. And we'll only allow scripts to be run from Google Analytics. Again, this source, the self thing whitelists all of us, so we don't need to put script and everything for us. This is a very, 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 what's the word, like draconian policy. We're not using much stuff here at all. But this is the kind of thing we're allowed to do now to limit who can load stuff onto our page. The problem with this method is that it doesn't really work if you've got a highly dynamic site. You know, you've got a tag manager that could bring in any other third party. Or if you've got a third party who has its own third parties, it could be a constant game of cat and mouse between like the marketing team, the development team, and the ops team to keep these headers up to date. But it's a good start. And the browser support's pretty promising. So definitely start looking into CSP. So CSP is great for limiting what we can load onto a page, but what if that file has been compromised? What if the third party all of a sudden turns rogue and starts loading nasty stuff? It's all well and good, whitelisting ImageX, but what happens if they get hacked and all of a sudden they're sending nasty stuff? So a very new thing called feature policy. Anybody heard of feature policy? A couple of people. This limits what that third party is allowed to do once it has arrived. So we could say autoplay none, good. No one should ever be allowed to autoplay anything ever. Geolocation, we can use that. We can ask the user where they're from or where they're based, but we can't allow a third party to do that. No one's allowed to use the camera because our site doesn't require it. No one's allowed to use the microphone because our site doesn't require it. So here we're beginning to lock down what access the third parties actually have. These need to be enabled with the provider that you're pulling from. For all of these, need to have enabled cores, so they need to make sure that they can actually be consumed. Browser support for this is very, very underwhelming because it is completely experimental. It's an unofficial feature. It's not really rolled out anywhere. There's sort of tentative support in Blink and WebKit. Next one, sub-resource integrity, SRI. Anybody using SRI? Anyone heard of SRI? Cool. Well, this is, again, more to do with security, but this deals with the eventuality that you've connected to the right person, but are they sending you what they've promised to send you? And sub-resource integrity is basically you compare the hash of a known version of a file that you want, and you drop that into an integrity attribute in your HTML. So basically, this is using SHA-256. And then, so it's a checksum, 256 checksum that's then base64 encoded. And what the browser will do is when it loads that code.jquery file, it will quickly checksum it against this integrity attribute. And if it's been manipulated, or if it's been changed or modified in any way whatsoever, that script will not execute. So it means that you're now beginning to mitigate against contaminated third parties or compromised third parties. Interestingly, my first question with this was, well, surely that's going to slow the page down, right? Having to do checksums against these files every time the page loads that file, either from cache or from the network. The overhead for 256 is about 0.8 milliseconds, very non-scientific, but the overhead of actually performing these checks is minimal, so it's absolutely worth doing. And interestingly, this sort of code example is verbatim copied and pasted from code.jquery, so they are providing you the checksums. So by default, code.jquery's CDN is using sub-resource integrity. Browser support here is all right, so we should definitely start using it. If we can make use of it, we should do. And if you just look at the MDN documents for SRI, it's really quite comprehensive. Last thing, I promise, is priority hints. Who's heard of priority hints? Okay, about 10 of us. We should all get a drink later. Priority hints fixes a specific problem with resource loading, right? Prioritizing how resources load. Now, this, unfortunately, isn't a very compelling example of when to use priority hints, but I thought I could kind of shove it in there. Priority hints give us a new attribute called importance. Now, all JavaScript files are born equal. They're all treated as high priority if they are render blocking or parser blocking. So this means that the browser can't really differentiate between your useful jQuery.js and your sleazy third-party.js. So what you can do is you can put the importance attribute on there, and the browser will use its own heuristics and this attribute to say, well, I'll give most of my resources to jQuery, but this third-party.com/ads.js, I'll give a reduced priority. Now, I can't stress this enough. This isn't actually the primary or most compelling use case for priority hints, but it's definitely worth keeping in mind for stuff like that. When you can get resource contention, you don't want your ads.js bottlenecking your actually useful JavaScript for the user. I lied. It wasn't the last thing. The last thing is probably the worst. This is the laziest bit of advice I can give you for mitigating against third parties, is restraint, right? It's a real cop-out for me to say this. But if you can, just go get by with as little as possible for as long as possible. The biggest defense you have against third-party slowdowns is this. It's restraint. If you don't need a fifth ad network, don't use it. If you don't need a third sort of analytics package, get by without it. Try and use as little as possible for as long as possible, and nearly every single point in this talk becomes irrelevant. Thank you very much for listening.
Nice. Yeah, we've got time. Thanks. First of all, thanks so much, Harry. That's fantastic stuff. My pleasure. We've got time for just a couple of quick questions. We'll just we'll take the opportunity to give Shirley a chance to plug in.
Cool,
well,
cool.
There's so much gold in that talk. There are so many. You're still good. Yeah, you're still good. There's so much in there that I think people would want to take away and start actioning straight away. And I love that sentiment of restraint, because the fastest code is the code that never has to get delivered or executed.
Amen to that.
Yeah, but when it comes to exercising that restraint, so much comes down to what people are going to put into your site that you've crafted and developed through Google Tag Manager. Mm-hmm. Do you have any kind of tips for helping to have that? It's a slight battle sometimes. It's almost a cultural thing and a political thing rather than a technical thing. Are there good ways to convince those people who might be adding those bits of those assets, those third-party resources through Tag Manager to have that restraint?
Yeah, so the reason I was so keen to stress the old ask, don't tell, is that if you're abrasive in those discussions, they're immediately going to like add 10 times more tracking pixels just to spite you. So yeah, always approach it softly, softly. Ask, don't tell, but also show, don't tell. The graphs that show how much faster the website is with the third party missing, you can't really argue with those.
Yeah.
But also just, this word is so overused in our industry, but it's like display a little bit of empathy. Understand that they probably do need to be able to track things because the site's like wealth pays your bills or pays your salary. Everyone's got a part to play, so it's not a case of just assuming I'm an engineer, I'm the smartest, and third parties are bad. So yeah, having empathy, and then also there are third-party tools. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but my favorite is SpeedCurve, because they actually do have a third-party sort of tracking, well, like performance tracking thing. So you can look at how fast your site is and how quickly it loads and all that kind of stuff, but there's also a separate section with dashboards just about third parties, who is particularly expensive at any given time. And you can get historical data. So there's a company I've been working with where we've been chipping away at the third-party problem, and the marketing team can see the sort of the improvement in performance. The graph's going down, right? Things are getting faster. And it's also forcing them to be more considerate. And what they found, oddly, is that the quality of the data they're capturing is way better because they know why they're capturing it now. They've thought long and hard about if they need it. They've not kind of got misleading or noisy data. And it's allowing them to, like silly things like running fewer A/B tests means you can have more confidence in the change. If you've got like different colored buttons, different hero text, and different something else all running at the same time, no one knows what's going on. So it's been, it takes a while and it's all about the education, but my entry point is always softly, softly, ask, don't tell, and work together to solve it.
You answered my next two questions all with that one
I've
answer.
got a really bad habit of giving long answers to short
actually,
questions.
I was sitting back there going, oh, I've got some really good questions from, oh, we just answered that. Oh, we just answered that. So I think that speaks to the quality of the talk. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to let you go, and we'll get Shirley up here next. But thanks for a wonderful talk. Really good stuff.
My
Please,
pleasure.
our thanks for Harry Roberts.
Thank you.